good morning, or evening, or afternoon, whenever you happen to be connecting with this message. That's the joy of having these services recorded. And whatever time it is, I am really grateful to be able to imagine your warm presence on the other side of this camera and connect in mind and in spirit with you, if not in physical presence this morning. So the title of this morning's talk is called Retreat. And in case you're not sure, there's an exclamation point on the end of that word. And the title came to me after I was speaking with Victor about the end of year retreat, the New Year's retreat that Robert Brummett is going to be leading, and Victor will be supporting. And you can find more information about that on the Temple Buddhist Center website. But when Victor was telling me about this, I said, "Oh, can I help out? Can I be involved in some way?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." And I said, "Ooh, retreat!" Exclamation point. Because I like retreats. It can be an acquired taste. It's not for everyone. And a lot of people are really intimidated by it, but I'll delve into that a little bit this morning about why you shouldn't be intimidated by it. So that's one interpretation of the title of this talk. The other interpretation might be the one that if you just saw it in print or heard me say it, it might come to mind, and that is retreat, as in fall back, get off the battlefield. And that's really the idea I want to explore this morning more in depth, because just a couple of days after I had this talk with Victor about the New Year's retreat, I had the good fortune to be able to participate in a 2-day training in yoga for post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was with an amazing teacher named Shay Molendijk, who, in addition to being a very talented yoga therapist, is also, she has decades of service in the Air Force, many of which she has spent supporting our troops who have experienced PTSD. So a lot of amazing knowledge that she shared very generously with those of us in the training. And one of the things that I learned as a civilian, this was news to me, was about something called an OODA loop, which is not a breakfast food. The OODA stands for OODA, observe, orient, decide, and act. And you might think, well, why am I talking about this? This is an acronym that comes from military strategy. You might think, well, why am I talking about military strategy during a Buddhist spiritual service? Well, I think it's not a coincidence that there's a lot of language in contemplative practice about battle. And we have this, great Christian hymn, "Onward, Christian Soldier," and we can talk about sometimes our inner experiences feeling like a battle as we're going through spiritual deepening. And in Islam, there's the word jihad, which has been really misinterpreted and misused in a lot of ways, but really just refers to when we're on a spiritual path, that special effort that we make to maintain that path. So whatever we're doing to stay focused and stay true to that can be referred to as jihad, and it's a very positive, powerful word. And even in Buddhism, we have the great Bodhisattva of Manjushri with his flaming sword. He's ready to battle and cut through delusions so that we can be awakened. And so in the training we talked about this idea of an OODA loop is a loop because we observe, we look around and we see what's actually happening right now. What are all the facts that I have available to me? And then we orient ourselves and we think, what is the perspective that I'm bringing? What lenses do I have? What other perspectives might be influencing the way I'm interpreting all this data? And then we take that all in and we decide what to do with it. And then we act. And maybe that act is to do nothing. But when we act, we know often actions have consequences. And so then that begins the loop. We observe what happened when we acted. We reorient, we decide, and we act again. And this loop, if we're in the heat of battle, can get so tight that it becomes ineffective. It can't actually work properly anymore. And that might be the time that we need to retreat. We need to get somewhere where we can make space and expand this loop, where we can actually have space to orient and observe and orient and decide and act more effectively. And just again, it's like this amazing domino effect on this topic. You know, I spoke to Victor about this retreat, then I had this training where I heard this concept. And literally just a day or two after finishing this training, I was listening to an amazing podcast called Deconstructing Yourself by Michael Taft, a wonderful meditation teacher. He was interviewing Chandra Easton, who has worked and studied with Lama Tsultrim Alyon. And if you haven't heard of Lama Tsultrim, she wrote a book a few years ago called Feeding Your Demons, about this amazing Tibetan Vajrayana practice, which she's modernized and made accessible to the Western world in a very powerful way. It's a deep healing practice that really involves healing that inner battle that we talk about, like sometimes feeling like we're fighting our inner demons. And so Chandra was telling this story about Lama Tsultrim that I thought was really powerful. It described this OODA loop in action. So before she became this really big proponent of this modern version of this practice, which is called Chod, if you're interested, C-H-O-D, ancient Tibetan practice, she was studying very intensively with a Tibetan Lama in the Kagyu tradition, if you're interested in those names and lineages. And she was noticing, it was really weighing on her heart that she was beginning to discover these female teachers and these women of wisdom and these divine feminine practices like Tara Mandala. And she was really noticing that they weren't given a lot of space in a lot of traditional teaching that she was encountering. And she wanted to make space for them in the world. And she had this vision of creating a retreat center and devoting it to the space. And so she went to her teacher. And if you're familiar with the Tibetan tradition, it very much is a guru-student relationship. So the teacher-student relationship is a very deep one. And sometimes it's considered even a deeper bond than with a parent or family member. And so she went to him and she said, I have this idea, I have this calling. And he said, no, if you do this, it's going to take you off of the path and I can't be your teacher anymore. And she was just torn. And so this was a point, right, when she had unintentionally, unexpectedly sort of entered this battle, right? Like, who's right? What do I do? And this is where she needed to make this decision, which a wonderful late great contemporary philosopher named Kenny Rogers sung about in a song called The Gambler. He said, sometimes you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So the idea is you have to know, when do you need to hold your ground and stay in the battle, and when do you need to surrender? And I want to point out, I want to be real clear here, that retreat is not surrender. The question is, how do you know when to hold them and when to fold them? And that's what Lama Tsultrim was facing. How do I know? How do I know? Is he right? Am I right? What do I do? And so she went on a 1-year retreat. She stepped back from the battlefield. She didn't surrender. She decided to get some space and observe and orient and decide and act. And she decided to follow her vision. And it was hard. That teacher relationship did rupture, but there is a happy ending. They were, according to Chandra's retelling of this, they were able to come together years later, her teacher and her, and he acknowledged the deep value of what she had brought forth into the world. And in the Tibetan tradition, she is actually currently recognized as an emanation of Mache Ladron, who was the originator of this Chud practice many, many centuries ago, which in Tibetan lineage and tradition is pretty much the highest acknowledgement that she could receive of the value of what she's brought forth. So that's great. And so that's the value potentially of retreat, right? Of getting off the battlefield is being ready to come back. But I want to acknowledge the reality for most of us. I know even now, if I was facing a really big life decision, I wouldn't be able to go on retreat for a year to figure out what to do about it. And for many years in my life, the idea of retreat in a contemplative sense, the way we often think about it in the Buddhist world is that you have to go somewhere, you have to pay to go to a retreat center, and you have to do it for many days, and that's the only kind of retreat that's really meaningful. And I had that myth in my mind for a long time, and it just wasn't reality for me. I couldn't take time off work, I didn't have the money, I had other obligations. I also for many years had health challenges that made it seem really overwhelming to go to a retreat center where maybe there would be some strict diet and who knows what the sleeping accommodations would be. And so I just kind of dismissed the idea of retreat for a long time. And so what I want to offer this morning is maybe an expansion, a different framework, a reorientation to this idea of retreat and what it might look like for each of us. And one of the things that got me thinking about retreat very differently is something that Shinzen Young came up with many years ago before, we were all doing Zoom and COVID and all this stuff. And he realized that this was a reality for a lot of people, that these 10-day or 5-day even retreats at retreat centers weren't realistic. And so he came up with something called a home practice program, which is 1 weekend a month. It's by phone. Anywhere in the world that you can call a phone number, you could get access to him and other amazing teachers and do a retreat from wherever you were. And not only could you do that, it's divided into 4-hour sections. You didn't even have to do the whole weekend. You can just do 4 hours at a time. And when I first heard this described, I thought, well, I can do that. I don't have to take time off of work. I don't have to go anywhere. I just have to shut the door and tell my husband to leave me alone for a couple of hours and get on the phone. Like, I can do that. And so I did, and that started to revitalize my idea of what a retreat could mean. And another really great example is the New Year's retreat that is coming up. We're doing it virtually so that everyone can stay safe. So you can do it from anywhere that you can connect through the internet. Maybe that's your home. Maybe it's maybe you have a barn outside that you can go get away from the family in. Whatever it is. And it's designed to be a householder style retreat. So you connect during the day, we're together for many hours, and then we have time to come apart. And there is room to meet the daily obligations of an engaged life. And so I just want to take this morning to really empower you, especially as we head into the end of what's been a very challenging year for all of us. And this is a really great time to think about what battles are we engaged in right now that we might need to find some space around, that we might need to step back from and reflect on. Is it time to surrender? Is this a battle that I could let go? Is this something I'm carrying over that I've been fighting and I'm not even sure why I'm still fighting it? Or is it something where I need to regroup, where I need to regather, get some new clarity, and come back with a renewed focus? And so now is a really great time of the year to start finding space for that. And it might look different for each of us. Maybe it's just an extra long walk by yourself. Maybe it's telling the roommate or the housemates or the family, hey, I'm going to have my headphones on and I'm going to be in the bedroom for a couple hours and I just need to be undisturbed. And that can be your retreat. The whole point is just that it needs to be intentional and focused, and so that you have that healing space. And so that's what I want to leave you with this morning, is both an invitation to join us for the New Year's retreat, and also let you know that there is a myth that being on retreat means that you have to be in this perfect posture and this scion of Zen, Om posture. And you know, there are 4 traditional meditation postures: seated, lying down, standing, and walking. And I use all of them on every retreat, even if it's just a 4-hour retreat, usually. They're all available to you. And sometimes we get this myth that if we go on a retreat, even if it's just for a few hours, we have to be, doing maximum concentration effort the whole time. And the truth is, that's not the case. You can give yourself a break. You can ease up. You can just sit there and do nothing, because no one's going to know if you've been daydreaming about cats for 30 minutes. And the likelihood is someone else on the retreat has done the same thing or will do the same thing, because that's what it's all about, is just getting that clarity about, like, oh, that's what I just did. I can start again. I can just re-engage with the practice, just like we do in life. We know when to hold them, we know when to fold them, and we just keep going. So extending that invitation to you to join us on retreat, or to find whatever retreat works for you in your way as we end 2021.